Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
Behold the pretty filthy creatures. My name is Eric, and I'm joined today by Michael.
Yeah, I don't know if they're that filthy. I guess they are pretty filthy, aren't they?
We have a double feature today about not letting go, and it involves two different films.
It does. One of those films is the Spanish Jaunt, The Skin I Live In, and then the
Spanish Jaunt?
Yes.
That's what you're going to go
It's
with?
a jaunt
All
through Spain.
Okay.
And then the Miranda July Joint, The Future.
Did you attend some kind of film critique class this weekend or something?
No, I just call everything joint because I think Spike Lee's a goofball.
Good. All right, that's good. I can stop editing that out of every single intro we do then. It'll be funny. We're going to spoil these movies. We're going to talk about the entirety of both films and spoil them really tremendously.
Pretty much as hard as we can.
Probably, right? That might not be true at all. Maybe we never even get halfway through the movies. I have no idea what's... I was going to make a Kreskin future joke, an Ed Wood future joke. Was that Kreskin? I've forgotten everything we've learned on the show. I should know that. Criswell, that's important. We're going to spoil the movies, so use the chapters. That's all I wanted to tell people. They don't have to get spoiled. They can just use the chapters and skip over the movie they haven't seen.
Yeah.
I apologize in advance for every time I'm going to call Robert Antonio Banderas.
Okay.
I know I'm going to get excited.
All right.
And that's what's going to happen. The Skin I Live In is a movie starring Antonio Banderas
As Robert.
And I think the last time we saw him, probably the last time I've seen him in anything, was Haywire. I mean, as far as release dates, right?
Yeah.
The thing I remember about that conversation is I was a little sad that young, smooth Antonio Banderas was gone. And it was, old, decrepit, insane-looking
Replaced by Mandy Patinkin Banderas.
Well, the thing is, turns out that that's movie magic, because here's Antonio Banderas in a movie from not terribly long ago, still, I think, looking pretty fucking smooth.
Yeah, he looks just like the father from The Misbehaviors, which for me is the quintessential look for Antonio Banderas, with the slicking his hair back.
Sure,
as he gets in the elevator.
It was the apex of the Banderas.
Right. This film was really bizarre for me when it came out because it got a ton of critical acclaim. It got some gold statue was thrown at it.
Sure,
I don't remember
right.
which one or for what reason. And initially, I was kind of interested in it because Antonio Banderas, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's enough to get me into a film.
Right.
And I remember thinking, this is a drama and maybe I'll get around to watching it. And then I read somewhere it's a thriller.
Sure.
Which completely...
The word thriller is what sold me.
Completely changed the whole perception of what this film might be. And so I got my hands on it, but then I neglected to watch it for a long time until... And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I saw it on a list of the best horror movies you didn't see.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And I was like, so now it's a horror thriller starring Antonio Banderas.
So this is funny. Let's talk about this just for a minute here, because I want to point out that we are not impervious to the same fucking things we complain about all the time with the packaging of a movie.
Sure.
And the way it's marketed and the spin. The Skin I Live In is the same movie it would be with, just another cover.
Right.
But if you had put some gore on the cover
Sure.
and put Antonio Banderas in some shadows or something, we probably would have put it on our show 4 years ago.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The thing is it kind of goes back to our feelings on spoilers. This is the problem with even getting a single line plot synopsis before you see the film.
Mm-hmm.
Because the second I have an idea of what a film might be,
right,
I'm going to judge whether or not I'm going to see it at midnight. And if the answer is no, I may never see it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's just weird to think about the packaging of it is something that, it's really kind of ironic because it kept it off our show for this long, not knowing how much it would fall in the vein of the things we know we like 100% of the time.
Right.
But also, having just been pretty horror heavy, we decided we're going to move away from that for a few weeks.
Mhm.
And so, of course, we do The Skin I Live In, and we go, oh, whoops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are only, I think, areas of the movie. I wouldn't call it, I don't think I'd walk away from this going, oh man, that was totally a horror movie in disguise. But it is as much a horror movie as a lot of the things we've just easily called horror movies.
I guess the weird thing about horror movies now is that it's kind of moved into two camps. One is where it's trying to scare you, and one is just where it's violent or weird.
Sure.
And it upsets you. There's a difference between being frightened and being upset, but both of them fall under being horrified.
Well, and I think The Skin I Live In would do a little bit of both of those things.
Yeah.
It's also funny to think about, too, a lot of the parallels with, remember we saw at the Music Box a couple years back, we saw Eyes Without a Face,
Yeah.
I think was the name of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that this movie actually has a lot in common with that so much as just the marketing approach and the cover, making an icon kind of out of the, the face mask.
Right.
There being some similarity there. But people, when you go, oh yeah, Eyes Without a Face, what is that? I think most people would say classic horror film.
Sure.
It's actually a lot of the other elements of The Skin I Live In that I really just fucking adore. I think the careful fixation on items in the beginning of the movie, everything is very quizzical,
Sure.
There's the petri dishes and the surgical utensils, and we kind of take a moment to study everything as we're figuring out what the fuck is going on. And that kind of discovery is really, I think, is my favorite thing about this. I know I've been harping on this a lot on the show lately, and I don't think that's going to change either. But especially as you see more and more things and you start to anticipate where movies are going to go, that component of mystery it's the one thing that after doing our show for this long, another thing I'm not going to stop harping on, that will draw me into, that drew me into Lost when it came out.
Yeah.
And that drew me into a lot of the serialized TV that you and I like. That made me really like Spiral and Primer.
Sure.
Is kind of going, well, what the fuck is happening? Okay, I'm getting details. I'm solving some kind of case.
Yeah.
Those two movies in particular to go back over again.
Right.
And kind of comb through them.
And it's interesting for me that you mentioned Lost, because I think for me, this film does another thing that Lost did, but something that, so this is interesting, something that I tend to defame Lost for, but I think this film can be championed for doing, which is, as the film unfolds in the earlier acts, you get a lot of, it's almost like exposition, but it's character development in the form of exposition that in any film ever made other than this one would be a hamster style.
Yeah, totally.
I'm speaking most specifically of the hard fireproof skin.
Yeah, right.
That any other film would end the movie with him being in a fire and having to rescue Robert from a steamroller or something.
We're looking for reasons that the film is going to be worse.
But instead, we get this revelation that he's invented a fire retardant, extra hard skin layer. And instead of that being a plot point, it's a look into Robert's character. It's a look into his lack of being able to move on from the death of his wife. And it's also a look into his mad scientist tendencies to go outside of the allowable social, things that a scientist can do, and take it to a level of obsession to the point where it's harmful. Right. To everybody. A lesser production would unveil these things and then use them as crutches for the remainder of the film, as opposed to unveil them and go, yeah, I mean, that's a thing he did, but that's not what we're doing here. Right. That's that guy, but that's not this movie.
I think even when we start to get the backstory, there's just as many questions along the way. It's a constant give and take. The movie starts and it has a very every scene is, kind of got that curiosity. From the first time we see the woman in the suit and she's posing and, you're watching it not immediately sure if you're even looking at the human form.
Right.
Until you can kind of pull back a little bit. Robert works inside a glass box. Why? What is he doing there?
Sure.
You also don't know how much of this woman being trapped here is her being trapped or is perhaps part of the science, right?
Sure. Well, if she's a willing subject, that this is the final stages of some process.
Right.
Yeah, it's the way.
Well, and when you see how meticulous everything is in terms of the surgery, and it has to be clean and
Right.
precise.
Exactly.
Is she trapped or are we just being clean and sterile?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Are we delivering things to her through a window because it's a near, I don't want to say airtight, but she's kind of in a vacuum chamber, or is she a prisoner there?
The beginning of the movie for me was so confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything is so natural and the performances are so genuine that
So natural, like when the Tiger Man approaches the gate.
that's when things that's where I would
Okay.
mark Act 2.
Okay,
Is and that's what I was about to get into is the first three characters that we're introduced to.
right.
They're so unconcerned with the development of a plot.
Sure.
Those three characters have been stagnating in that environment for a very long time.
Right.
And they've interacted solely with one another, and they don't have a strong need to explain themselves because
Right.
they orbit around each other and have seen every facet of each other's character.
Mm-hmm.
They've all known each other for a long time. One person has built the other. I mean,
Yeah.
these three characters have no way of exposition.
Yeah. No need to explain themselves to each other.
Exactly. So you throw in a Tiger Man from Carnival, and
Sure.
I don't mean the show, for the first time
Yeah.
on Double Feature. We get random Tiger Man who shows his ass to a camera,
Right.
and suddenly I go, "Oh, this is definitely a horror movie, isn't it?"
Oh, see, I went, this is definitely Spanish.
Oh, okay.
That
See,
was-
I thought this was going to be some sort of cheesy throwaway. Oh, here comes the first body or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
We've seen horror movies where they introduce characters for the slaughter. That's part of the fun.
Sure.
And that whole, again, the whole development of, oh, that's her son, and oh, there's a background here, and oh, there's this backstory, and this applies to that, and such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've introduced this catalyst for more character exposition,
Right.
but the exposition comes from a weird place because that character knows every other character
Right. Yeah.
from
See,
a
that's the
different
problem
point of
again.
view.
Right.
And so instead of the full, I mean, I want fucking full frontal character profile. I want a goddamn spinning naked Antonio Banderas with pop-up video, right? At this point.
Right.
But instead we get this guy and nobody questions who he is. Everybody understands who he is. Everybody knows why he's there.
Right.
He knows who these people are. Oh, you look just like her. We should fuck first.
Well, I know that makes it even
And
right.
so you're
Exactly.
going-
This is more David Lynch territory.
Yeah.
Where a guy in an animal suit shows up and nobody thinks it's weird, and he rapes characters.
Right. Well, and you're sitting there going, is he raping her? Is she into this? Have they had
Right,
sex
yeah.
before? I wasn't
Yeah.
under the impression that this person was even a human like a year ago.
Yeah.
So the film kind of throws you into a tumultuous relationship between every character. And then we get that scary moment where we see Robert's violent side,
Mm-hmm.
which is just fucking immediately juxtaposed against here's the backstory, here's everything you wanted, and it's only getting
Sure.
worse. In almost Irreversible. Remember Irreversible?
Yeah, definitely.
That's where I start getting pangs of Irreversible, because we go, this is where it ends.
right.
Here's how it started, and here's how it started for real.
Well, and the way it starts too, it almost seems that's where I feel there's that give and take, those questions again, because it starts in a way where I'm going, hold on, we started too early. I
Yeah.
don't care about all this fucking party stuff
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with present day. Like, don't give me 6 years ago. Give me like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And I'm a total sap. I fall for these films all the time. But once again, not for a second do I go, how are these things related? How are they all going to come together? I'm sitting here going, this must be irrelevant. I don't see how these things could possibly be related. And then when you figure out what happens, I mean, I'm punched in the face with it.
Yeah.
I'm going, no, who saw that coming? Even though clearly, like, why are they that far back in time?
Sure.
Who are these new characters? How do they become
Sure.
relevant? But I think that's, that is such a critical thing for why this movie's amazing. So many different movies will, ask what will happen instead of, they treat the backstory like it's a chore.
Sure.
Exposition.
Yeah.
It comes out of our mouths like it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, we have to have exposition. Let's just
Sure.
try and get it over with as fast as we possibly can. And instead of being so diehard into what will happen in this movie, it makes people beg for information, even in that backstory. And I think begging for information is something that, I'll come out and champion it all the time. But the reason is that it keeps you engrossed in a movie.
Sure.
You sit up and you go, God, I got to pay attention to this. I got to know what's happening. Who are these people now?
Mm-hmm.
And to not confuse an audience, but still keep them full of questions.
Sure.
I mean, that's something that, mysteries struggle with all the time.
Right.
Film noir, we talked about as a genre that's just full of questions, but maybe overwhelmed by it in cases. And so to sit on that very careful line here of let's give people answers, but do it in a way that also creates new questions.
Sure.
And then once you finally got all the answers, instead of the next natural step, which is, well, why are we even watching anymore? It goes, oh, I got all the answers, and this is fucking horrifying.
Sure.
What could possibly happen now?
Right.
You immediately find that out, and then your movie's over.
Yeah.
I mean, is that not a perfect exercise of a film?
Oh, I think it's fantastic. And I think the big thing with this movie is that the whole time you're sitting there going, yes, but what? And they keep giving you these side answers, and you keep going, yes, but what about this? And then they go, well, also this and this. Oh, okay, but what about this thing? This one
I'm
thing.
cataloging that. That's nice. But tell me the thing.
And then eventually the film goes, oh, I get what you mean. Yeah, he turned that boy into a girl. And you go,
yeah, that wasn't obvious. I'm sorry, you might not have been around for when that happened.
You just go, wait, what? And they go,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the answer. And you go, what? And they're like, anyway, moving on.
This was an idea you and I had from before we even started doing Double Feature, where we came to this realization that if characters have known each other for a long time, they would not give exposition. And so it's a really, really captivating place to come into a story when you're just dropped in.
Sure.
And you have to catch up with the characters. And I think that still holds true all these years later. We see that in something like The Skin I Live In, and it's just as, on the point as when we talked about it years and years ago, just being thrown into something and having to catch up. It gives the audience a lot of credit, and I think ultimately it makes them more interested in your movie.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that horror moment, though.
Sure.
I mean, it's something I don't think we should avoid.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like as we talk about this now, and for people who didn't chapter and haven't seen the movie, we're dropping this kind of bomb in the plot of, oh yeah, and then, transgender surgery. Anyways, all this other stuff is going on. The film doesn't treat it like it's the heaviest goddamn thing in the world, but it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the big, if you're going to put it on a list of top horror movies, whatever, this is pretty fucking awful.
Oh, yeah.
And then there is the sort of sadism that goes along with, not only did I remove your genitalia and give you this operation, I'm now going to mold you into something that is visibly indistinguishable from what you used to be. And there's all these.
And then I'm going to fuck you.
Right. It's some sort of ultimate psycho revenge type. You could never feel the pain of what you caused this woman unless I completely changed everything about your gender identity and, psychologically tortured you. There is a moment when I don't think that about Robert. And I'm wondering when that, Robert is introduced to us as world-class surgeon, done 3 of the 9 of these types of facial operations, has developed a new scientific breakthrough, gene splicing be damned. And he makes a really great, I won't go on and on about it here, but he does make a really good impassioned argument for we're able to splice pig genes to make our tomatoes grow better. Everybody accepts that. Or let's say all rational people accept that. Why can't we do the same for the science of surgery?
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy I get behind in the beginning. And there is a moment where I had to kind of wake up to the realization that no, he's the guy in the mask in Hostel.
Yep.
You know, he is the bad guy. He is torturing this other human being who kind of sort of raped, but maybe kind of didn't really.
An immediate mirrored image of what happens to that character as well, is they kind of sort of get raped, but maybe not really.
So where is that moment for you? I mean, you would agree that at the end of the film, Antonio Banderas is the psychopathic killer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel altruistic world-class surgeon at any point, or do you go into this movie going psychopath?
I'm on board with him as a character for a very long time.
Sure.
I think that he's the good guy when she is trying to escape. I keep thinking you should just go back to him. He knows what's best for you.
Sure, yeah.
It's not until we get that martyrs moment where suddenly the boy, it's when he's running the boy off the road.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
even that part of me goes, yeah, he raped your daughter. Run him off the road.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is you also see that emotional side of him trying to connect with her and being identified as a rape victim, and you feel for him. Not in the origin story Hannibal feel for him sense, you know?
Right.
Not in the, he's a psychopathic killer who is trapping a woman in his house, but he has a human side.
Yeah.
This is still just, we're on the fence about whether he is medically quarantining a person or kidnapping and holding her hostage in his home. And that just makes you feel for him even more. So if it's not when he's running the guy off the road.
It's when he locks him up in the room.
Yeah.
As soon as you have somebody naked in chains, Eric, I cannot support you unless they want to be there.
It's funny. It's such a visual image. It's so powerful of a visual image. That was exactly the moment for me too. I really do think it is the visual imagery. It's the point where we look at it and without even needing any real fact or information, we can identify visually, well, I do know one thing. You've got a guy half naked chained up in a cellar. That's not okay. That's the point where we've crossed the line. One other thing I wanted to mention is that this is a Pedro Almodovar movie. And can we see more of these? I'd just like to see more of these.
I think we have to.
Movies. This is probably one of the most famous Spanish directors. He did Bad Education. He's worked with Antonio Banderas on other stuff. He did Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, which I think would be awesome for our show. I don't remember the name of that Penelope Cruz movie. I think it's called
Voltaire. Yeah.
Yeah, and didn't have a lot of time to talk about him because, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know a lot about him. But definitely something I'd want to look more into. Although the last time I said that, The Future, let's talk about, which is based on a play by crazy person Miranda July.
Yeah, so we did...
You remember her, person I wanted to explore the career more of?
Yeah, we did Me and You and Everyone We Know a while
now
back.
She's
Man,
back.
was that year one?
Towards the end near The Shape of Things, which
so
this movie probably has a lot in common with as well.
Miranda July is this, I think you hit it on the head. I think the best way to talk about Miranda July is a crazy person.
I mean, I haven't heard that show in a long time, but I believe that's how you first described her.
That's how I still describe her.
Yeah.
Anytime anybody mentions Miranda July, the first thing I say is she's crazy. She's a nut job.
Well, she's a nut job in the way you kind of wish all directors were nut jobs.
I think,
you know what I mean?
I think you'd be hard pressed to find a director I love who's not a nut job.
Right. She's done a lot since we last talked about her on the show too. She's written a slew of books.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was true even back then. But magazine articles, even a bunch of music.
Yeah.
This was based on, I guess, a play that she had made.
Sure.
And now we have this follow-up film, this independent film, shot on red, which you know I fucking love, and starting with a talking cat.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Miranda July has this really interesting method of storytelling, which is that I think Miranda July watches Miranda July movies, and just goes, "Yep, that was a good movie."
Right, right. See, that's the sense I get too.
And
has no idea.
everybody else watches Miranda July movies and is busy going, "What does that mean? What is that supposed to be? Why is that cat talking? How, did he actually stop time? Is that Moon the old man now?
Right.
What's going?" And you're sitting. Why is she dancing? Is that supposed to be sexy? That can't be sexy, is it? Wait, does she want to have sex with him right now? Is he raping her? Why is that little girl in a hole in the ground? And you're sitting there asking just a bunch of questions that, I mean, if somebody were to tell me okay, so let's do the reverse experiment of what I previously said for the skin I live in.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody comes up to me and goes, "There's a new Miranda July movie. It involves a couple who's in love that gives up on the internet and they eventually stop time. Also, there's a cat." I would look at you and say, "I never want to see that film. Please keep it away from me. I hate Juno." And I would walk
Right.
away.
Right.
But Miranda July is unbelievably talented in that she can take what I would chalk up as some bullshit indie film and make it something with a particular level of gravity and earnest grace
Oh yeah.
that I get so much out of these movies. And I don't know if it's the performances of the characters. I don't know if it's how they interact with each other. I don't know if it's her being in the film so she can commandeer the scene to look and feel the way it needs to.
Right.
But right around the time this film stopped time, the second time, the first
Yeah.
time I rolled my eyes for a good 20 minutes.
Sure.
But when
You mean on the couch?
right.
I also think, by the way, that two people typing on a couch on their laptops together is a perfect existence.
Yeah.
I don't know if the film is trying to speak out against the internet, and I have plenty to say about that. But I see that image, and unlike the imagery you just know in The Skin I Live In, I look at that and go, that's a perfectly acceptable thing. I'm sure
Yeah.
that most people watching right now are going, man, our culture and all we do is play on computers and we don't even connect anymore. I think that's fine. Hang out on your laptops on the couch.
I agree.
Stop time.
Yeah, the second time he stops time, though, when he starts speaking to the moon,
Uh-huh.
that is a make or break moment in any film.
It is, isn't it?
When that you know what it is, and this is a true testament to her filmmaking skills.
Mm-hmm.
That is the moment in every Coen Brothers movie where I go, I'm out.
Yeah.
But Miranda July does it, and suddenly the film makes so much sense to me. I get it, and I love it, and let's see how this goes now.
I had to sort of stop and go, am I okay with this? Shouldn't I be asking? I am strangely okay with this.
Yeah.
Shouldn't I be asking myself at this moment, wait, hold on, we're introducing sci-fi in,
Right.
late into the movie as a callback to
Yeah.
a joke from earlier
Sure.
in the movie. Shouldn't I really have a problem? I couldn't make myself have a problem
No.
with it. And I think that's true of a lot of the Miranda July stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't know why I want to have a Miranda July problem.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
I'm right there with you.
But the Juno thing you said is on point. It's not just independent film, because we see a lot of that.
Oh, yeah, and we love it.
But when you think indie film, like you think indie band,
Yeah.
you just kind of...
Garden State, Napoleon Dynamite.
Right.
Understated, ironic film.
Yeah, right. Irreverent humor film.
Fucking
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, just it's nails on a chalkboard for me from start to finish in any other arena. But Miranda July nails it.
She does.
Right around the time he starts talking to the moon and they're in that room and she's about to confess that she's been cheating on him,
Yeah.
I just want him to stop. I want him to stop her and be like, I don't want to hear her tell you this because she's crazy and
Right.
there's something going on here.
Well, it's also the exercise of what's the most interesting thing we could do at this point.
Sure.
And you kind of, you either know exactly how that conversation is going to play out, and it's going to be one of the most boring conversations of the whole movie, or he's going to stop time. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so we go with the more interesting of the outcomes. That doesn't always work. It's not a great general guideline or anything, but God, it certainly works here. So I want to focus on this without focusing on negativity, and it's hard Because without just taking all these other films and throwing them under the bus and going, these suck, why is this one good? That is really the question I want to address.
Mm-hmm.
The Future has a lot in common with a certain ilk of film that I do not like.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I love The Future and why I love Miranda July and why I don't. Is it more substantive? I mean, I don't know if that's true.
I think
if anything, those movies have plenty of substance. They have a lot to say. Just the way they say it, is so.
I think honestly that I don't think we're being any more negative on this genre than we are on every other genre. It just so happens that you and I watch more horror films and so can put more horror and sci-fi and exploitation on double feature that we know have substance. But
Sure.
I think you and I can both agree that most horror films are terrible.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And we just don't talk about them because we've seen so
Right.
many good ones that we can find a bulk of genre that exists in a good place for us. And I think this genre is the same way. I don't feel remotely bad saying something like Garden State or Napoleon Dynamite has nothing to say. That
Yeah.
part of the film is being understated and the film is trying to say sometimes there's nothing to say. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think that that's a failure in every piece of art. I don't care if it's a film or music or a painting or a goddamn dirty limerick.
Sure.
If your art message is sometimes there's nothing to say, fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah. At the core, I guess we disagree with that. But there's also, we talk about horror and we could go, yeah, the Children of the Corn movies are goddamn awful,
Mm-hmm.
but then we still find interesting things to say about them.
Yeah.
So I think there's also something to overexposure. If we just saw every fucking movie in this genre, I'm sure we'd start to adore it just
Sure.
because we would get it.
Sure.
We would see the common threads. We would go, what is this doing? It becomes that 3-point scale
Yeah,
a little bit.
exactly.
It's okay. This, maybe I wouldn't even liked this movie a couple of years ago, but how is it stacking up against these other films?
Sure.
What kind of new things is it trying to bring in?
Mm-hmm.
I think Miranda July, another thing I'm afraid of lumping her in with, but is a conversation that's in the back of my mind, is female filmmakers.
Yeah.
And that is, it's a common theme among a lot of films by female directors. Maybe not on this show. We put American Psycho on this show,
Mm-hmm.
but, I think about Lost in Translation
Sure.
as being another movie that is a lot about the air between conversation,
Yeah.
about the pauses, about, I don't want to do a whole big chunk on Lost in Translation, but it seems to be a common theme in a lot of movies that are directed by women. And I feel wrong saying that,
But you gotta say that.
It's like talking about The Eye and going, yeah, it's all these Chinese people and their damn ghosts.
Yeah,
I feel
right.
like I'm being sexist, Fucking women making all these movies about the distance between human beings.
Yeah, but
Disconnect.
if you wanna immediately combat that, just look into this film and so the film is, I guess, at its core. I didn't know. I wouldn't say this from watching the film, but the synopsis of the film definitely says something along the lines of, they're gonna stop using the internet and change the world.
Something like that. It also mentions their cat.
Yeah.
I think this movie actually starts in the most tragically normal sense, which is anthropomorphic cat.
Yeah.
That should be, I'll go on here and I'll call Miranda July, a crazy person, but the things that are legitimately crazy versus the things that are societally accepted, anthropomorphic animals has to be like at the end of a spectrum for me.
Yeah.
As more people on planet Earth do it than do not do it. But I think that is just batshit nuts.
Yeah.
I think Miranda July being crazy artist, totally normal. I think Miranda July talking to cats,
Yeah.
just absolutely
Yeah.
ludicrous.
That's fine.
Sorry, but yeah, synopsis and talking
so
cats.
they quit the internet.
Well, that's also fucking crazy.
But the weird thing about this, and to go back to the feeling of feeling sexist, is they quit the internet and one of them wins by quitting the internet. The other one loses by quitting the internet.
Mhm.
The one who loses is the woman, and she loses in the way that 9 out of 10 films make the man lose. it's very uncommon that in a film, especially a film made by a woman, or maybe not, that the woman ends up cheating on the man and then regretting it.
Right.
I mean, I can think of 10, 20 films and TV shows where the woman cheats on the man but doesn't regret it later, and it turns out the man was a scumbag. But the way it usually goes is the guy cheats and he should feel terrible about it. But instead, in this film, the guy meets his future self and buys a hairdryer from him and learns about his wife and becomes a generally fulfilled human being and finds this acquiesced. Like,
would you use the word fulfilled to describe him? I mean, I don't leave the movie with the sense he's very fulfilled.
Well, I think he gets to a point where when he comes home and he's all, we're going to be okay.
Yeah, sure.
He's reached a point where he goes, wait, our lives aren't over.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of everything, and this is good, and this is fine, and I'm a lot more centered and safe now.
Sure.
To be immediately knocked off that pedestal by going, yeah, you might be, but I'm cheating on you.
Yeah, right.
And leaving you.
Yeah.
And so all of that turns into this really interesting plot that comes back around to, you guys killed that fucking cat, you monsters.
Sure. Which I find to be the least pressing issue of the entire film. Yeah. I'm not even sure I would have written it on my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have written it on my calendar because I live in the 21st fucking century and have a calendar on my cell phone.
Right.
Who are these people without the internet?
That's Miranda
I don't
July.
understand this.
To really put her in a nutshell, based on what goes on in this film, Miranda July is a person who goes, I found an injured cat on the street. So far, I'm fine. I've got this. Totally understand. Took that cat to a veterinary hospital.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Still on board.
Gave it a name, which is already crazy to me to name an animal, but yeah.
And they're going to kill it if I don't pick it up in 30 days. Okay, so you want the cat to live because you think you have some attachment.
I'll still get behind that. Yeah.
So you're going to pick it up in 30 days. Now this is where the disparity comes in. I go, okay, what date is that? It's the 31st. I'll put a reminder on my phone and it'll go off and I'll go, yeah, cat day. And I'll go pick up the cat.
Right.
Miranda July goes, oh my God, on the 31st, our lives are over because one of us has to be here the whole time. And we can't ever go to Florence at the same time. We'd have to go separately. And if you want to go skydiving, I can't be your tandem buddy. And we have to sell our tandem bike. And if we ever want to get dinner for two, we're going to have to hire a cat sitter or eat.
Right.
You eat something and then I'll go and eat my stuff. But our lives are over after this cat. That's Miranda July.
You don't ever think like that, though?
No, because
I don't know, man. Like, all right, so I'm 27. I decided I want to come out to California for a couple years. I've definitely had moments where I go, well, God, then I'm basically 30, and then my life is just fucking over. And I thought I was going to be so much smarter, and I want to watch the news, but there's so much to catch up on. I mean, they're kind of reading my thoughts at points in this movie.
Yeah.
Also, having a cat locks you down.
That's the thing, is the second something on my calendar is followed by, and then your life ends, I take it off my calendar.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. This is, again, another reason I don't own pets. I don't want to get locked down by them. But I do understand, this isn't a place I find myself in, but a place I can at least identify with a little bit of. I wouldn't frantically, run around quitting everything I do and unplugging my internet because I think I'm going to die because I have to pick up a cat in 30 days. But there are times when I think, you start fast forwarding through all these, well, what's it going to be like when I've done this since school. I'm going to be out of school in 3 years. And then look how fucking old I am. I won't have done anything with my life,
Right.
Or the same kind of identity in I'm going to do a song every day for 30 days.
Yeah.
And then you can't do the first fucking... This is like me writing End of State.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, all right, let's do the first song. And go. And go. And do the song.
I'm going to get some popcorn.
Right. I see a lot of where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I think they're meant to be a little bit of caricatures. I
Sure.
don't think they're meant to represent actual people.
Well, one is.
This is the right. It's the logical conclusion of let's really extrapolate as far as we possibly could on these, these ideas of dates on our calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Also, maybe they don't have phones that have calendars. I mean, the technology in this movie looks like it's from, 1998. They have a webcam that sits on top of their computer.
Yeah. Well, they have the
I don't know.
technology to make cat gloves. So
You're right. They do. Do you think the film has an anti-technology bent?
I don't know about.
Is this just a catalyst for them? Is it? I think about the same, look at it with the environmentalism, right? It's using environmentalism in the movie, but then the end kind of goal and the end conclusion is sort of apathy,
Yeah.
sort of, well, no one really gives a fuck. I don't know if that's meant to say something cynical about people or if it's just to go, this isn't a cause. Planting trees doesn't do anything.
I think.
But I'm more worried about that with the internet. If it's
you
actually,
wanna know what I think speaks to me more than the whole fucking beige vest
yeah, please.
is when that little girl buries herself outside
Mm-hmm.
and then comes in crying.
Yeah.
That to me is this moment in the film where it's saying the world is really scary when it's just your head in it.
Sure.
If you're actually a part of the world and you're just a bystander to the planet, you're going to be overwhelmed.
Right.
And you're not going to be able, because the thing is one person isn't going to be able to fix all the fucking crises of the environment.
Sure.
And if you don't have the internet to connect you to the other people in the world,
Mm-hmm.
the world is going to become a terribly overwhelming experience.
Yeah, it's too big. It's huge.
Yeah.
The internet makes the world smaller.
Yeah, exactly.
It allows everybody to talk. I wonder about it because Miranda July, being an independent artist, probably relies on the internet a ton.
Well, I mean,
So I'm not
you and I both
necessarily-
watched this off Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So, I'm not 100% sure she would make a rallying cry against the internet, but I do think it kind of feeds into this idea that people have about the internet pulls us, apart, get off Facebook and experience real life.
Uh-huh.
And I don't believe that at all. I think I love people too much to hate the internet.
Yeah.
The internet is all of us at once.
Yeah.
It's the reason you and I still keep up with each other every fucking week,
Yeah.
even though we live what might as well be on different planets at this
Mhm.
point.
Yeah.
And we found this whole community of people who could, this is the wrong time to pick on the internet.
Yeah, I know.
When Double Feature just gets kickstarted.
Yeah.
I just think you look nuts. I think you look crazy. I think if people are doing that thing where they're going, I just want to unplug from the internet and, stop looking down at my phone and start looking up at people, they're probably using the internet wrong.
Yeah.
After all, you can meet people on Craigslist. You got that hair dryer, you buy it for $3. What a deal.
Or best offer.
Or best offer. Speaking of internet, doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. You can write us a letter using the electronic mail or go to our website, which is doublefeatureshow.com.
So as much as I would like to say we're done being confused by independent film, I think we have a smart move.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to take something that we were more comfortable with by doing Miranda July, a female filmmaker that we've already covered. Two things that Double Feature does really well.
Makes quirky films, but is somebody we want to evangelize,
Yeah.
right? Quirky films, Double Feature kind of uncomfortable with. Miranda July should also be uncomfortable with, but, a woman making independent film. That is an area we understand.
Right.
In fact, we might be too comfortable at this point.
Yeah. So next week, we're going to kick in the overdrive. We're going to bring some Wes Anderson into the mix.
So we're going to go probably the highest ratio of quirk to commercial success that
Yeah.
we possibly could.
Yes.
Everyone but us on planet Earth understands Wes Anderson.
But we're going to take the easy route. So first, we're going to do The Sessions, which is that John Hawkes movie.
I see what you're going with here.
And then we're going to pair that with the easiest Wes Anderson film, Moonrise Kingdom.
The easiest. We'll see if you live up to that next week.
Watch more fucking film.
Bye.
with even getting a single line plot synopsis before you see the film.
Mm-hmm.
Because the second I have an idea of what a film might be, I'm going to judge whether or not I'm going to see it at midnight. And if the answer is no, I may never see it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's just weird to think about the packaging of it is something that, well, it's really kind of ironic because it kept it off our show for this long, not knowing how much it would fall in the vein of the things we know we like 100% of the time.
Right.
But also, having just been pretty horror heavy, we decided we're going to move away from that for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, we do The Skin I Live In, and we go, oh, whoops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are only, I think, areas of the movie. I wouldn't call it, I don't think I'd walk away from this going, oh man, that was totally a horror movie in disguise. But it is as much a horror movie as a lot of the things we've just easily called horror movies.
I guess the weird thing about horror movies now is that it's kind of moved into two camps. One is where it's trying to scare you, and one is just where it's violent or weird.
Sure.
And it upsets you. There's a difference between being frightened and being upset, but both of them fall under being horrified.
Well, and I think The Skin I Live In would do a little bit of both of those things.
Yeah.
It's also funny to think about, too, a lot of the parallels with, remember we saw at the
A ton of critical acclaim. It got, some gold statue was thrown at it.
Sure,
I don't remember
right,
which one or for what reason.
Uh-huh.
And initially I was kind of interested in it because Antonio Banderas, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's enough to get me into a film.
Right.
And I remember thinking, this is a drama and maybe I'll get around to watching it. And then I read somewhere it's a thriller.
Sure.
Which completely...
The word thriller is what sold me.
Completely changed the whole perception of what this film might be. And so I got my hands on it, but then I neglected to watch it for a long time until, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, I saw it on a list of the best horror movies you didn't see.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And I was like, so now it's a horror thriller starring Antonio Banderas.
So this is funny. Let's talk about this just for a minute here, because I want to point out that we are not impervious to the same fucking things we complain about all the time with the packaging of a movie and the way it's marketed and the spin. The Skin I Live In is the same movie it would be with, just another cover.
Right.
But if you had put some gore on the cover and put Antonio Banderas in some shadows or something, we probably would have put it on our show 4 years ago.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The thing is it kind of goes back to our feelings on spoilers. This is the problem.
Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
Behold the pretty filthy creatures. My name is Eric, and I'm joined today by Michael.
Yeah, I don't know if they're that filthy. I guess they are pretty filthy, aren't they?
We have a double feature today about not letting go, and it involves two different films.
It does. One of those films is the Spanish Jaunt, The Skin I Live In, and then the
Spanish Jaunt.
Yes.
That's what you're going to go
with.
with?
A jaunt
right.
through Spain.
Okay.
And then the Miranda July Joint, The Future.
Did you attend some kind of film critique class this weekend or something?
No, I just call everything joint because I think Spike Lee's a goofball.
Good. All right, that's good. I can stop editing that out of every single intro we do then. It'll be funny. We're going to spoil these movies. We're going to talk about the entirety of both films and spoil them really tremendously.
Pretty much as hard as we can.
Probably, right? That might not be true at all. Maybe we never even get halfway through the movies. I have no idea what's Music Box a couple years back. We saw Eyes Without a Face.
Yeah.
I think was the name of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that this movie actually has a lot in common with that so much as just the marketing approach and the cover, making an icon kind of out of the, the face mask.
Right.
There being some similarity there. But people, when you go, oh yeah, Eyes Without a Face, what is that? I think most people would say classic horror film.
Sure.
it's actually a lot of the other elements of The Skin I Live In that I really, really just fucking adore. I think the, the careful fixation on items in the beginning of the movie, everything is very quizzical,
Sure.
There's the petri dishes and the surgical utensils, and we kind of take a moment to study everything as we're figuring out what the fuck is going on. And that kind of discovery is really, I think, is my favorite thing about this. I know I've been harping on this a lot on the show lately, and I don't think that's going to change either. But especially as you see more and more things and you start to anticipate where movies are going to go, that component of mystery it's the one thing that after doing our show for this long, another thing I'm not going to stop harping on, that will draw me into, that drew me into Lost when it came out.
Yeah.
And that drew me into a lot of the serialized TV that you and I like. That made me really like Spiral and Primer. I was going to make a Kreskin future joke, an Ed Wood future joke. Was that Kreskin? I've forgotten everything we've learned on the show. I should know that. Criswell, that's important. We're going to spoil the movie, so use the chapters. That's all I wanted to tell people. They don't have to get spoiled. They can just use the chapters and skip over the movie they haven't seen.
Yeah.
I apologize in advance for every time I'm going to call Robert Antonio Banderas.
Okay.
I know I'm going to get excited.
All right.
And that's what's going to happen. The Skin I Live In is a movie starring Antonio Banderas
As Robert.
And I think the last time we saw him, probably the last time I've seen him in anything, was Haywire. I mean, as far as release dates, right?
Yeah.
The thing I remember about that conversation is I was a little sad that young, smooth Antonio Banderas was gone. And it was, old, decrepit, insane looking.
Replaced by Mandy Patinkin Banderas.
Well, the thing is, turns out that that's movie magic, because here's Antonio Banderas in a movie from not terribly long ago, still, I think, looking pretty fucking smooth.
Yeah, he looks just like the father from The Misbehaviors, which for me is the quintessential look for Antonio Banderas, with the slicking his hair back.
Sure.
As he gets in the elevator.
It was the apex of the Banderas.
Right. This film was really bizarre for me when it came out, because it got